Right now, a man who knows firsthand, former CEO of CKE Restaurants and Heritage Foundation, visiting fellow Andy Puzder. Andy, it's always great to see you. Thank you so much for being here this morning. How would you assess inflation today?
Well, it's terrible. I mean, it's really impacting American working and middle-class families. And Senator Obvious, Elizabeth Warren, is right. Inflation is going to hurt the Democrats severely in November. But her proposals, she's out there advocating not only for Build Back Better, as you noted, but she wants the president to forgive this student debt, which Larry Summers, who told Democrats this was going to happen, a Democrat economist telling them that if they did that $1.9 trillion spending bill, they'd end up with hyperinflation. He's now saying, look, this is a terrible thing to do, to forgive student debt, because it infuses another $100 billion into the economy annually. But Warren supports that. I think Democrats just have really no idea what to do to lower inflation. Everything they do would actually increase inflation.
You know, earlier I spoke with Nancy Lazar from Piper Sandler, and she's saying, look, at some point, something's got to give because companies are going to have to be forced to cut prices. She, mentions the Netflix disaster. Netflix lost $57 billion in value as it was reporting. People are canceling their subscriptions to the streaming site, and she thinks things like that are going to force companies to cut prices. You buying it?
No. Look, Netflix is kind of in a unique position when it comes to impacting inflation. Inflation's driven by supply and demand, and there's no shortage of supply for Netflix. Now, there may be a shortage of demand as people turn away from its content, but that just means they're turning to other places. Where you really see supply and demand impact prices is with energy, obviously, with oil. That's something that affects everybody. And it's not, as Elizabeth Warren claims, it's oil companies gouging. It's not oil companies gouging. In fact, when Biden takes oil from the Strategic Energy Reserve and releases it to increase supply so prices will come down, he sells it at the market price to these purchasers, just like the oil companies do. So what we've really got here is a supply and demand problem. If we can increase the supply of goods and energy, then prices are going to come down. Or we have to decrease demand, which is painful. Increasing supply is not painful.
And it is exactly what's moving the market today. Oil at $97.52 on crude, Brent at $101.90, both down almost 5% because of new China COVID lockdowns. We've got more rate hikes on the horizon, and of course the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, all adding to this fear impacting global growth. But look, there are worries now that this lockdown in Shanghai is going to move to Beijing. So if you're seeing that kind of a lockdown, that is a lockdown on demand. That's what's moving oil right now. What's your take on, as we move into the summer driving months? That's the peak time for gasoline. Does it go back up?
Well, it will go back up. It'll go back, one, because there'll be increased demand, two, because the Biden administration is doing everything they can to limit supply, and three, because just as happened in the rest of the world, eventually China will come out of its COVID crisis, and when it does, its economy will recover, and there again will be demand for oil. So that's really a very temporary solution and is going to affect inflation long term because, as I said, their economy is going to come back, demand's going to go back up. And we've got, Biden out there claiming he's trying to help the oil industry. But in fact, we got John Kerry trying to get banks not to lend to oil sector companies. We've got, they grant leases to oil sector companies, but they won't grant the permits to drill. They won't approve of better means of transportation to lower the costs of producing oil, like Keystone Pipeline. So their policies are exactly the opposite of what they're claiming they want to do.
Yeah, Andy, we're just showing this graphic. I love this graphic. I'm a total geek because this graphic is so compelling to me, and it shows the cargo vessels, the tankers, the passenger vessels that are stuck in the water right now, unable to unload and get reloaded, and that is causing this supply chain nightmare. You were right there dealing with this as CEO of CKE. Give us your sense of how things work when you've got a supply issue and you can't get the product to sell to customers.
Well, and that's a problem in the restaurant industry right now. I mean, people I know in the industry that I speak to are talking about difficulty getting cups, getting things to wrap the products in, even let alone getting the food products themselves. It's a terrible constraint, and as people are going out more and wanting to eat more, people have money thanks in great part to a lot of government largesse the last 2 years. People want to go out, they want to spend, they're willing to spend more to get something, so the price of everything just goes up.
Yeah, there you go. Supply and demand. Andy, it's great to get your take on all of this. Good to see you, sir. Thanks very much. Andy Puzder joining us.